All right, everyone. Thank you for bearing with us while we got set up. We had to do a quick change here because we're doing just so many awesome things here at Foundation. So, thank you for joining us today. My name is Chaz Sumners, and I'm an ed specialist here at Foundations. So, welcome to our Beyond the Conference webinar series. Today, we have Yana List and Andrew Francis, and we'll be getting started shortly. But before we do, I just wanted, to give them a chance to give a little heads up and information about themselves. But before that, I just wanted to talk a little bit about who we are here at Foundations and what we do. So we're a national nonprofit educational company that's located in Mount Laurel, New Jersey. And our mission is to improve the quality of education by building those skills of educators. And to do this, we work across the school day with after-school programs, schools, districts, states to create a brighter future for every single child every day. So if you're interested in learning more about, Foundations and what we can do for you and how we can help your program, feel free to follow us on social media, and we'll drop those links in the chat for you. And you might already know us from our premier educational experience, our Beyond School Hours Conference. We just wrapped up our 2024 one in sunny Orlando, Florida.
25.
25, you're correct, yes. And 2026, we will be right back there in Orlando, Florida, but we will be there from March 1st to March 4th, and we would love to see you there. So again, today's facilitators are Yana List and Andrew Francis. So do you guys want to go ahead and give us a little background about you?
Yana, go first.
Yeah, sure. Hi, my name is Yana. I have been with Foundations for a little over 5 years, and I come from a background as a school day, after school, summer educator, project director, curriculum coordinator. So I have worn just about every hat at some point. And I'm really excited to be really talking about the basics of what we need to make our program successful.
All right. Thank you, Yana. And I'm Andrew Francis. I have also been at Foundations for over 5 years, serving now as the Director of Evaluation Services, but before that also provided and continue to provide even today some support for technical assistance and capacity building and the work. So happy to be with you again today.
Great. So without further ado, let's jump in. So if you were here joining us the last time we were together, we left off with one question from the chat, and we promised that we'd jump to that first and answer it. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. So Donna was saying that she's loving all the information that she's getting, and she's in the process of trying to transform her program and move towards the suggestions that we were giving. So her concern is just not having enough funds to pay for what sounds like the additional staff that she needs for it. So in your opinion, what do you guys think is the ideal student to staff ratio?
So that's going to vary by state and by local laws. So that is something that is often decided statutorily. That being said, as much as we can keep it at a 1:15 ratio, that is really ideal if possible. And that's often the ratio that's required by states.
And just to add to that, sometimes we find that depending on the age group of the child, so those are much younger. If you're running early child program, sometimes that ratio may go to 1:10, or if there are students who have particular special needs as well. But exactly as Jana said, it's going to be depending on your state and local laws as well, definitely.
Yeah, your state, your needs for your kiddos and your individual population you're working with. So let's jump into some questions about just like high level leadership stuff. So we have a lot of questions just phrased in various ways about how do I know that I'm meeting the individual needs of each one of my staff members? Tricky question.
So the last time we met, we talked about establishing general management approaches or systems in place for staff. You understand, whether there's maybe general staff meetings, group meetings, but also having individual check-ins. And I think that's going to be important that we continue on that trend in having check-ins with our individual staff, setting up work plans for them, workflows that allows for us not only to give them feedback, but for them to also give us feedback as well. As a manager, we do something at Foundations called feedback and improve performance. But generally speaking, it's important that we're not only the ones who are providing feedback to staff, but that we also say, hey, am I meeting your needs as a staff in my program? Why don't you give me feedback on how I'm supporting you or how I can better support you to fulfill your responsibilities within the program. I think those are two approaches that could definitely help in terms of figuring out, am I meeting the needs or not? What do I adjust? Where do I need to, do more to support staff?
And you can also think about ways that you're collecting data about student or staff satisfaction. So, are you administering a survey at the beginning and end of the year about staff satisfaction, what they'd like to do, how they would like to lead their sites and programs this year? So, I'm taking the time to do some surveys. You can do focus groups. And you also really know that people vote with their feet. So, do you have staff that come back year after year? That's probably a good indication. If you have a lot of staff turnover, that may mean it's time to think about what are the issues that are causing challenges to staff for wanting to stay there, and how can we improve working conditions to make them want to stay long term.
I make a plug here, for Jan mentioned about the survey that when we redeveloped our evaluation framework, one of the tools that we include in our sample program binder is a staff pre-program and post-program survey. So before the program starts, around fall, or if you want to do it in summer, if you have all your staff, then it's a survey of them, as Jana said, as to what are their needs, what skills they think they bring to the program, but also what do they perceive as some areas that they may need support during the program year. And then at the end of the program year, you run the post survey to see, what feedback or perceptions they may have about how they were served, how they were supported, how they grew, but also what additional learnings they'd like for you to include for them, as you move into summer or into, the new school year of programming.
Yeah, I love that. We often think about using data to individualize the educational component for our kids, but we don't think about applying that to our staff too. Those surveys and then individualized work plans that can really help support staff. Now, that being said, we've all been in leadership, so we know that there's a lot of things, a lot of moving pieces, a lot of things that we're doing. So this next question sort of ties into that too, because we want to do all those individualized things for our staff, but how do we work around time constraints, right? We have people that are saying that it just doesn't feel like there are enough hours in the day to do all the things to support their program and their staff the way that they'd like to.
Yeah, I'll go first.
So there's sort of two answers to that question. I have two answers to that question. The first is think about what you can delegate. So there aren't enough hours in the day to do everything that has to happen for a program to be successful. But are you making really effective use of your team? Are you making really effective use of the other staff available? Or are you taking on too much for yourself? So that's the first thing. Check in on what can be delegated, what is a priority that you need to be doing, and what can be done by someone else or done at a later time. That's the first piece. The second piece is I think it's really important to take things one step at a time. We're never going to have a perfect program. We're never going to be perfectly supporting every staff member's needs. So we can choose to focus on one or two things to prioritize that year. Maybe that year you want to prioritize helping staff develop stronger classroom management skills. And that is your focus. That is the focus on professional development. That is what you're focusing on when you do observations. That is what you focus on when you think about pairing staff with mentors. Everything is going to be, that year's focus is on professionally supporting their practice as classroom managers, because we know that's something that is a challenge for a lot of educators. That means you're not necessarily going to be focusing on every other possible issue. So by focusing on one at a time and really dedicating yourself to improving that dimension in the year or the semester that you're focusing on, and then choosing a new focus on the next year and the next year and all of those pieces. So instead of trying to fix everything at once, change everything at once, instead choose something that is going to be your priority for the time period, and then move on to the next when you feel like you've made some really significant improvements.
Yana's answered it. I just said my approach has been using the 3Ds, which is one of what Yana mentioned, the delegate. So either you're going to do it, you're going to delegate it, or when you've done it, you're gonna delete it from
Or
your list.
delete it. That's the best part, right? When you get to
So
delete it.
do it, delegate it, or delete it when it's
Mm.
done. But she's absolutely right. You know, you can't be the all things to all men. You really want to, but it's just not possible. So whilst there'll be fires that you're always gonna put it out, you know, in all the school time, because that's the nature of it. But what are you taking that deeper dive into? You know, as Jana said, those key things. This year, key goal is to improve professional development or to improve their classroom management skills, whatever it may be. You want to zone in particular on those. And a big part of that is also in delegating is to recognize that your staff come with skills as well that can be expanded. I often shared experience that as we were trying as a program leader to expand family engagement in the program that I was leading, that even though, you know, as a leader, I may have known how to do family engagement, I had a particular staff who I felt had a much better relationship with the community at large. I had that too, but she was from the community.
Mm-hmm.
She knows the ins and outs of the community. And so we informally asked her to take on some of the responsibilities as like a family liaison or to help us with navigating that process, you understand, so that it took off some of the load of me as a program leader. You can do that. So spot those strengths, those skills in your staff and give them the opportunity to do that. So that gives you back some time, essentially, to do other things that you'd also want to do in your program.
Yeah, absolutely love that. And I feel like another really useful component of being able to delegate to strong staff is like that's a reason that strong staff can stay at your program because they feel like they have some responsibility now. Like, you know, they feel like they have more skin in the game, so to speak. That being said, it sort of leads into our next question, which is what happens when we struggle with having consistent staffing, right? When we don't necessarily have those pieces that we can rely on to delegate because we just have this turnover in staffing, like churning. So how do we manage, you know, do you have any tips for managing this inconsistent staffing problem that I'm sure a lot of programs are having?
Yeah, well, it's important to stop and to take stock as to why is it that staff are being inconsistent, you know, in their attendance. What are those prevailing factors? Some of it may be the culture of the organization, of the culture of the program. It's not enabling. It's a madhouse for them. It's a crazy place to be. And so the more they can find reasons to be away, they will be away. And you know, there was a time when people used to think that it's really about the money, but you know, people find opportunities to do other things that are less mentally demanding, let's put it that way, for you know more or similar dollars. And so they'll choose that way out. So it's important to figure out, you know, is the culture of my program enabling where people want to come and want to serve there? That's the first thing. And if not, then how am I going to work around that? Getting their ideas to how to make it be not just a space where they come and they do the work, but that they feel comfortable. You know, you show some appreciation for them. It's going to be getting some tea and donuts, whatever it is that you're going to do, but do something that shows appreciation for the staff. No, the other thing which I think is to look at the pipeline, right? What's the pipeline for your staff? It could be your pipeline is the school day, and these are people who are tired, overworked. They have so much to do already in the day, and you know they bring value to the program. But how do you balance that? There's a program I know that they do have a pipeline from the school day, but it includes not only teachers but also TAs are a big part of that. But they're also taking steps to expand that pipeline, you know, within their program policies, within the policies for their state and for their school district to also include high school students to be a part of, you know, like a mentorship program.
Right.
They're providing some support as well. So if probably teachers or TAs are out today, or even some of those ones are out today, you still are able, you know, to maintain program. Some people also operate what they call a substitution list as well, which is pre-prepared, and there are people on call, but they can say, you know, Andrew's going to be out today, it's going to be late. Can you, you know, be a part of the program as, you know, come and support us as staff-wise. So I think those are three things you can use. One, to, you know, build that environment so that we not only focus on getting people in, but get them to stay and get them on to come and be a part of the program each and every day. Working on, you know, your pipeline and expanding the pool so you have, you know, more people to draw on in the event that people need to be absent because they're sick or for whatever reason. And also, just providing incentives and encouraging them to want to come and share. Yeah, anything else?
I think you covered it pretty well.
Awesome. So we're talking a lot about wanting to like build and support and grow an awesome staff that can do the amazing programming that we want to put together for our kids, right? When we're doing that, sometimes we run into issues where there's a staff member there, they might be a good fit, but we might have to have a really difficult conversation with them. So, what strategies can you give for having those really difficult conversations with a staff member in your program?
So one of my favorite strategies is the sandwich method. With the sandwich method, I have to do the fingers. You start with something really positive, something that they're doing well, something that you've observed. Then in the middle of the feedback sandwich is where you're giving that kind of constructive feedback. And then you end again with something really positive. So you're by sandwiching some of that potentially difficult conversation, you're reinforcing to your staff member that even if they're struggling with something specific, even if there's something that you want them to change, you still see and value them for their unique contributions. And when you're giving that positive feedback, be as specific as possible. Generally saying you're a really valuable part of the team is great, but what is much more impactful is saying, I loved the activity you led on Wednesday. The kids were so engaged and they really learned a lot about music. I even learned something new. So giving that really specific feedback shows that you care, shows that you're observing them, that you're seeing them for who they are and what they bring to the table, and then makes it easier to kind of discuss and handle that less positive feedback or that constructive criticism that needs to happen, because they know it's from a place of value and from a place of wanting them to grow.
Absolutely. I think Yana has said it. The only thing I'd add is that try not to only be talking to staff or having these difficult conversations when things are going bad. If you build a culture of providing feedback, you understand, it creates the atmosphere, it creates that pathway, that bridge for you to have these conversations when things become difficult because you've already been engaging with staff before, you get to this very critical stage in the process.
Yeah, as often as you can find a time to say, oh, I peeked in your room and I saw that awesome activity. Or you saw a kid crying and the adult comforted that child and say, I really appreciated how you helped that child because that could have become a way bigger issue. Anything like that, any chance you have to give some of that positive feedback starts to build over time trust because they know that you value them for who they are and their unique contributions.
Great. Absolutely. So we've built this team, we've looked at our pipeline, we've worked with a staff member who needed like a little bit of correction, and we've gotten them on board. So what strategies can leaders start to use to sort of cultivate a continuous improvement cycle in that staff once we have them all secured and like sort of foster a culture of reflection and improvement?
I want to start to say that leaders must model what they want to see happen in their program. So it starts at the top, and that includes understanding fully what's required for continuous improvement. So going back to the very first I think response that Yana mentioned in terms of where we spoke about supporting staff and getting their feedback, we have to ensure that we have the data to inform our decisions around what needs to be improved and how are we going to do that, right? So do you have an understanding as to how your program is performing against those key metric areas that have been established, whether you're receiving grant funding or those have been established by your board or your management essentially? And are you collecting that data at the point of service in terms of what's happening and analyzing that, but also reviewing that at different periods, whether it's monthly or quarterly or whatever, and using that process, of course, going back before you even collect the data to have a very clear plan in place as to what you want to accomplish. right? What you want to accomplish, what are your goals, and how are you going to accomplish that? And you can implement, while you're implementing the program, you're collecting the data on that implementation and then using the analysis of that to determine, okay, what did we accomplish, what did we not accomplish, and to what quality as well was it accomplished, and then how do we then put some steps in place to improve. Yana and I spend a lot of time doing that for programs, and she does a lot of the analysis, and we see not only in terms of the quantitative numbers, but also visiting sites as well to see to what extent is your program being implemented with fidelity based on what you have said that you're gonna be doing. And we see to the numbers, but we also see it, in the field when we look at those as well.
Mhm. And again, I really agree with what you said about modeling and also taking that whole picture view. And that includes understanding how your program connects to the school day. And we always want our programs to be giving students those really positive experiences while also supporting their academic needs. So thinking about having conversations with the school day, understanding how can our program best support you, and then you can then use some of that data on student assessments, student grades to try to understand is participation in your program having a positive impact on your students' academic outcomes as well. And so that's really about that tie-in between qualitative data of doing some observations, having staff do their own reflection, as well as looking at some quantitative data, whether it's assessment scores or grades or other types of data to understand if you're actually helping students perform better in school as well.
Yeah, to add, it's important, as Jan is saying, that we have tangible, you have tangible evidence. And that is where many programs fall down, is that we kind of get it right to plan what we want to do. And then we just fast forward sometimes,
Yeah.
in our minds and our operations to the end.
That never happened.
Right? We just need this data. But taking stock of what's happening every day, every week, every month in your program, and essentially as you're observing, is it true to form that as what activities staff are doing, what students are doing, but also what they are producing, student work products are indeed aligned with what you really want to accomplish. That's important. That is where a lot of the disconnect happens in terms of moving from goal to activity and then looking at the results. The results are showing that kids are probably not improving as they ought academically. But we must ask ourselves why. Right, and we know there are a number of factors, but think about, okay, how has our program contributed to that or not? How can we improve our activities? How can we improve or the staff facilitation skills or whatever to be able to really accomplish that? So those are questions you want to begin to ask yourself when you think about those work products and think about what happens in between, in the middle, in the process. A lot of times that's where things there's a big breakdown.
And see, this is why I wanted this question for them, because they're both amazing when it comes to data and evaluation. So I knew they would have a lot of really high quality stuff to say. So I know we're talking a lot about data. We're talking about, observations. We're talking about, tracking metrics. A lot of that screams compliance in my head. So just a little pivot to some tips to make sure that we're staying compliant, managing all of that data, but still leaving room and encouraging creativity, in our programming and our, curriculum.
So step one, if you're a 21st century program in particular, make sure you have a positive relationship with your local evaluator. Whoever your evaluator, we are local evaluators. So whoever your local evaluator is, they can support you in both doing your data analysis, but really helping you understand what that data means and how we take that data to improve program practice. So when you cultivate that positive relationship and that really being in touch with them, not just at the end of the cycle when you need reporting done, but making sure that that's an ongoing conversation, that's going to be really powerful because they often might have data skills you may or may not have in-house. So that's the first step, and that's really something to be thinking about. The other thing is for many programs, especially if you're federally or state funded, the person who applied for your grant may not be the same person running or operating the grant. If you have never read your grant proposal or your program's needs assessment, make sure you've read that because it has a lot of valuable data. It tells you what the state is expecting you to do, where in case of auditing or if somebody from the state Department of Education decides to come do a site visit, they have your proposal. They want to see what you promised that you were going to put in place. So make sure that you are really familiar with your needs assessment that was conducted and really know what you're actually supposed to be doing in your program and make sure that your implementation aligns with that proposal. That's a big one.
Yeah. Something Yana said that really stuck out to me is she said practice. And I think that's what really makes compliance a little easier if we just practice. You know,
Right.
just practice daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly. Just practice these things. Whatever you said you're gonna be doing, and whatever was written in that proposal and was approved against whatever metrics or means of assessment in that request proposal. You want to assess as yourself, am I practicing what I said that I would do? You understand, sort of implementing the program, collecting the data, reporting that data, whatever it may be. That's key. So I think the more you practice, the more you perfect the art of doing this. Becomes second nature, second knowledge for you. And I want to expand to also say, don't do it alone as a program director or the site coordinator. Ensure that you sensitize and increase the awareness of your staff as to listen, hey, this is the whole gamut of our program. Don't just allow them to function in their little corner, implementing an activity here or there. We have to understand this is the big picture, as Jana said. This is the big picture of what we're trying to accomplish. This is what expected of us, and as such, this is the role that you play. And as you play that part, as you practice that, it really bumps up to a higher level in terms of what we're able to report and that we're doing, being compliant, but also expanding beyond compliance to actually providing those high quality opportunities for students and families.
Yeah, that was awesome and a very comprehensive answer. Thank you guys very much. So I know we're talking about having supporting somebody who has great ideas, making sure that we're still compliant with our data. What happens when we get a staff member? That staff member might be new to being front facing with kids. They might have a lot of great ideas and they might align with our program and they might be compliant, but they might just not be comfortable and confident just up there in front of kids leading activities in program. And sometimes we lose really good staff members because of that, or people who could, potentially be really good staff members. So how would you support a staff member who feels a little uncomfortable and maybe not as confident being up there in front for presenting content?
Well, there's no better way to learn than by doing,
Yep.
but also by observing. So especially in programs where you have a mix of staff who are more experienced, maybe have been doing it for years and years, and some newer staff, if you can pair them up with a mentor or just set aside for your less experienced staff to do some observations of other activities so they can get a sense of what is going on in other rooms, how other staff members do it, and then being a supportive and reinforcing positive member of their support team as well. So is it helpful for that staff member for you to drop by more regularly to do some more observations? Is it helpful for you to have some reflection sessions with that person afterwards so that they can reflect on what went well, what they want to improve on, how they want to change their practice next time? The needs of every staff member are going to vary. What brings them comfort and support is going to vary. But offering opportunities, offering options for how you and other staff members can support them can help a staff member feel like, oh, there are all these people that care about me, and give them a sense of who to go to when they have questions or when they need help.
Yeah, I just want to add quickly to that a part of it is, as plan it with them, as staff are reflecting, let them be very deliberate, break it down into smaller tasks at school, what you'd want to see the staff do more of, you understand? And what else want to look for is how am I going to know as a staff that I have improved, in this regard? And as they're watching you do it or watch other staff do it, then they're able to reflect and see how they're growing. One thing that we've also done at Foundations, which I think has been very helpful, is that we've done large scale PD, let's say for an entire staff in a foresight program. But recognizing that the staff need more hands-on support, what we have done is to go beyond that PD to actually develop like model lessons and model activities that we then demonstrate, as Yana mentioned, demonstrate with students and have staff watch that.
Oh, okay.
You understand? Say, here's an example of how this could be done to really you want to increase student engagement, or you want to demonstrate how to do high effective project-based learning activities. And as they watch, then they are then able to be eased in that process to begin to take over from you. So not only co-teaching, but also we do, you watch, and then you do, and we watch, and we reflect together as to how we can improve and grow.
It's a great way to support a staff member who might not be super confident. And just a reminder, these are all questions that we have gotten from all of you. So please feel free to share any questions you might have in the chat, and we'll get to them, as soon as you pop them right there in the chat for us. Let's talk about supporting a different kind of staff member, a staff member who might have some sort of hesitancy around actually having intentional engagement with the students, right? That might be the staff member who, instead of being involved in the activity, they're just like hanging back, watching it all happen, right? So how do we encourage that person to be more intentional about their engagement with students?
But that one,
it's tricky, right?
And I'm really thinking about it because you have to understand that staff in particular, and by that I mean the age and stage of that person, right? And in understanding where they're at developmentally, then you're able to engage them. But I think it begins first with a conversation in terms of why is it that you feel the need to not want to engage with students. Do you have fears that you probably don't have the skills to do that, or is it that you've had challenges before where you have tried to do that and it just didn't work out? So it really starts there with understanding the rationale behind whether a fear or their inability or them choosing not to engage, and thereafter whatever is gleaned from the conversation, then you could probably guide them as to how they can begin to ease themselves into that, or being there with them essentially. It could be that the staff may need to just come up with very simple activities, or you need to find simple activities that they can use first of all to build relationships with the students first of all, right? But I've seen cases where staff are fearful of being around students because they don't know how to do the new math, and they're like, if I go, I'm gonna embarrass myself completely. So it's best I stay away, right? And I've had to say to program leaders, you need to probably put something in place for this staff to to improve their skills to be better able to support students to doing that. Or is it that you're gonna have specialist staff then who are able to do that? So we have to be mindful of how are we setting up our staff to also fail or to succeed by looking at their own skills and gaps in skills or competencies and what we're asking them to do. So it's not just internal in terms of what they may be dealing with as a staff, but also external in terms of their interaction with students and how that creates a fear, or that just creates this wedge between them taking on those responsibilities. Yeah, any thoughts?
The only thing I want to add to that, it really builds off of that continuous improvement process. Sometimes sharing that, back in the day when I was starting out, I had challenges too, building that connection, building that sense of we're all on a growth journey. And just because some of us are farther along in our careers doesn't mean we don't also have things we can learn. So I think that also connects to that modeling idea of showing we're trying to grow too, and it's okay to not really know yet, as long as you're willing to try and willing to make the effort to improve.
Yeah, and with that, just think about, what does an engaged child look like, sound like, etc. Because sometimes staff really don't know
That's
that.
a really good point. Yeah,
They're
sometimes
like,
staff come to you, they don't
like
know.
they just think that if the child is just busy, then that's fine, right? Like just doing busy work.
Right.
But but essentially, what does it look like? What does it feel like? What really, should they be looking for that says, yeah, this child is engaged. They're asking the kind of questions. You understand? They are contributing to the conversation. They are staying on task, or if or they're engaging. They're collaborating with others. That sort of a thing. Those are some very quick indicators that starters need to be aware. As to exactly what am I looking for.
Sure.
That tells you that this child is engaged or not.
And so as we support these staff through these struggles and they grow and they get their wins, what are some really good ways to acknowledge those improvements and celebrate the wins that the staff members are having?
So there's an old saying, give critique in private and praise in public. A lot of staff like praise in public to be recognized at a staff meeting. There's also staff who might also prefer to be praised in private. That will vary a little bit. But again, that's something I think I mentioned earlier of taking frequent opportunities to give really specific positive feedback to make that a part of the culture of your program. Every time you notice something that a staff person is doing that you think is exceptional, tell them. Tell them how amazing you think it is, how much you appreciate their connection to their kids, how you saw kids being engaged in something you learned. So all of those things are ways to give that positive feedback. And again, we want to make sure that that is part of our program's culture because that is something that we want to do again and again.
We gave shout outs, as Jana said, even informally, just that people know that they're doing well. But when we had like daily, just quick program check-ins before programming started, so everybody's on the same page. 15 minutes or so, we gave shout outs to each other. But even as a program leader, I gave those shout outs to them as well. In larger settings, you want to do a staff of the month, staff of the year. Those things really, really matter. A lot of people, I think that it's money. Yeah, money makes the world turn up, people say. But some people they're looking for words of affirmation, right? So for them, some of them it may be just receiving gifts, and it doesn't have to be anything big. It could be my favorite chocolate or my favorite type of coffee or chocolate or tea. I'm a tea person. Whatever it may be, but those things go a very long way. But how do we also build a culture to have students express that as well? Because students can be depending on the age. So those sometimes middle school kids may not always be as thankful or as grateful. But how do we, incorporate that into our supports for staff? Say, hey, when Miss Yana comes in today, let's all make her something or just shout, thank you for doing this, or do something nice for her. So, not just as a leader, but also allow for other staff to also show that appreciation as well. It may be a small write-up of a card or something, whatever it may be. So those things go a far way in encouraging people and acknowledging their achievements and contributions to your program.
Absolutely, yeah. I love a good celebration of staff. It's a good way to just buoy the overall morale, and it's a great way to just combat burnout too. Speaking about burnout, though, what are some ways to recognize that sort of those early stages of burnout or disengagement in staff? Because no matter how good the staff is, you put enough on their plate, they're doing enough, they might have a lot going on outside of work, and they might start to burn out. So how do we help support them, recognize those early signs of burnout and sort of support them through that and get them back to an engaged state?
In a lot of staff, one of the first signs might be a staff member saying, I want to quit because they're exhausted. But hopefully what things you might see beforehand is a staff member having maybe some disproportionate reactions to student behaviors, a staff member who seems really disconnected, a staff member who seems like they're not really performing at the level that they used to. You're used to them submitting these great lesson plans, and for the last 3 weeks, they haven't submitted any. So keeping an eye out for kind of changes in behavior can be really helpful. And one of the things we want to do is remember that burnout doesn't have to be inevitable. A lot of that burnout happens because staff feel overwhelmed and they feel alone in it. Like they don't have anyone to talk to, they don't have anyone to get support from. If you see staff people that you think are either at risk of burnout or are kind of in that burnout process, how can you support them? Can you make sure that you're having regular check-ins with them? Is it possible to make sure there's an aide or even a high school student in the room so they have a little bit more support, they have an extra set of hands? So thinking about how we can support those staff members when we start to suspect they're struggling, because we're all human and we all make mistakes and we all struggle and we all have different capacities. And for some staff members, they're going to reach it while they're working in your program. They've reached capacity of what they feel like they're really able to do. So we have to think about how to be supportive and balancing the needs of your students and families with the needs of your staff people, because you're responsible really for all of them. And our goal is for our students and our families to learn and have a good time. But we also want our staff to have really positive experiences and to feel like they're doing meaningful work.
I'll just add that as well, just the interactions with students as well, whether they're on edge all the time or, outbursts, those kind of things, just changing those behaviors, between them and students, them and other staff, but also with you as well. Those are definitely some warning signs. And so to prevent that, we have to do a lot, as Yana says, in managing those interactions, understanding when is this person reaching a critical level, you understand? But also as I'm delegating or asking them to take on different responsibilities, I'm mindful of that. Am I making the pendulum swing a little bit too much on that staff member's side as opposed to another? And as you're doing that, take those little breaks. As Yana spoke, I thought about the fact that when I ran program, there was this thing which many programs I'm sure have. They talk about, schools out, programs in, which means that there's never a time for you really to be on break, because when schools are on break, you're like, oh, we're gonna meet the needs of our families by keeping our doors open so kids can have somewhere to go. When you're doing that, estimate whether you will need the full complement of staff depending on how many kids will really be a part of that. And if it means that for this holiday in January, then this half of staff will work and the other half and take a break, so to prevent burnout. And then when it comes to May, around Memorial Day or whatever it may be, whatever holiday, and that we manage that and give people those opportunities for breaks, but also that we create opportunities to celebrate together, to have a little party time together. So we play hard, but we work hard, but we also play hard so that people don't feel overwhelmed, by all the work that they have to do. Because it can be a very difficult space, because they're holding space for kids every day, 3 hours a day, that sort of a thing. When do they get some sort of a breather and not head into a burnout situation?
Yeah, really difficult. Especially if you don't notice those signs, early, then they start to disengage. They're not as involved with the program. That impacts our overall program. That's not just something that happens with staff, though. That's something that I've seen happen with families too. So we got a lot of questions surrounding low family engagement in programs and how we encourage families that might not traditionally have high engagement with the program to actually interact with us and engage. So do you guys have any tips around that?
Sure. So family engagement, again, it starts with understanding where people are as families. What are their work arrangements? And as such, when do they have time available, if any, to engage? Can they engage in person all the time, or is it that there's going to be a situation where they're going to engage virtually? And I really thought about it, I'm like, before the onset of the pandemic, we didn't really have all these virtual engagement, but it has really taught us that it's an opportunity for us to engage people with, sometimes they're able to multitask. If we put that in right,
Air
put it
quotes,
right,
yeah.
the air quotes there, right? But they're able to do some other things while also probably listening to what we're doing. But I want us to see family engagement as not just them coming into a physical space or being online for 30 minutes or an hour doing an activity. That has its space. But could it be that you're sending, so for example, I couldn't make it to the parenting seminar on how to support my kids, in completing in improving their literacy.
Mm.
Is it that I could do a quick handout, with some tips I could send home? That's family engagement. Or could it be that I could have recorded a session, send that home, and say, hey, can you watch this or listen to this while you're driving to work, and just give us some feedback, when you're through. Or it could be doing a 5-minute video of that, summer video of that. So I'm starting to think about family engagement, at different in different ways, just recognizing the demands on people and how sometimes we burn them out by asking them to do so much when they're already being asked to do so much by programs as well. But seeing it as different levels, if it's just to build relationships first of all, or are we talking about more deeper things like supporting academic improvement or achievements, or is it supporting their own growth as a family, whether it's improving their economic situation or improving their own literacy or improving them being more aware of the opportunities that they have, for post-secondary education or for anything career related. So I'm seeing in those buckets and thinking about those ways that we can begin to meet people where they are by figuring out their current work situation, what are their commitments, what time do they have, but also how would they want us to engage them? What media are we going to use that works for them, whether it's print or electronic or in-person meetings or virtual meetings, and really taking advantage of those opportunities to engage them.
I like that answer.
Fair enough. So while we're talking on the topic of like family engagement and like activities and events surrounding that, we got some questions around families, like communities that have families that have a lot of diverse skills and cultures and whatnot, and how we can bring them into program and have them share those skills, those abilities, those knowledges, those cultures with our larger program and all the rest of our families.
So I think this is something where we really want to take what is often known as a strength rather than a deficit perspective. So saying what everything that our families bring to our community, these are special, unique, these are skills that we might not have. So even if our parents or our families don't necessarily have a lot of experience or background as educators, their careers might be something that's really interesting to teach your students about. If it's possible to set your kids up to do job shadowing, we've seen that be really successful with middle school and high school programs. If you have family members who want to come in and teach students to cook a particular recipe that is common in their culture, if they can come in as volunteers and just help with programming, especially if you're having some staffing troubles. Those are all ways of identifying the unique skills and abilities that your families bring to your program, even if they're not traditionally academic skills. They might have knowledge, expertise that you yourself and none of your staff have. So really valuing and treating your families as partners is something that we want to emphasize and do really dedicate ourselves to forming those family relationships and cultivating those strong relationships that will often continue for years. And we know that the more our parents care about our programs, the more likely they are to bring their child regularly. Our kids might have a lot more investment because they know it's important to their family members. So those relationships with families really pay dividends. So thinking about really the kinds of special skills that they bring in that you don't have in-house, and really appreciating that diversity. It's a gift to have our communities filled with so many different people with different experiences and different knowledge, and to make use of that.
I love that. Celebrating all of this, the diverse skills and knowledge, and that makes the program feel safer for everybody, all of our kids. I know that we're getting close to the end of our time, so I would encourage you, if you do still have some questions, please add them to the chat now, and we'll address them first thing in our next session. But I want to safe, seen, supported, regardless of their background or their identity.
So we know that some of our staff, some of our kids, might be in environments that aren't necessarily as inclusive and as welcoming. We know that some of our most marginalized students and families may be particularly suffering. That might include families with undocumented members, LGBTQIA families, students of color. So we know that all of these families and communities are being negatively affected. So I think the first piece is being honest about that and acknowledging the struggles that they might be facing. It might be really hard to focus on school if you're worried about one of your parents being deported. So acknowledging that these are very real challenges that our families are facing, and really saying that we want to make whatever else is going on politically or anything else, we want to make those values front and center in our program. That means being really specific in the way we talk to families, making sure that we're being inclusive, trying to have a staff that is demographically representative, that are really able to connect to the cultures and the communities that they serve. Really thinking about the kinds of training that you offer to your staff to make sure that they are educated on really serving children and families with diverse needs that they might not have exposure to. None of us have experience in every topic, in everything, every day. So trying to offer that support and giving your staff those opportunities to learn and grow as well.
Yep, absolutely. And I think a part of that is just to allow the students and the families to create, decor and other visual representations of who they are and what that means for them, and put that in a program space, so they can say, I've done this, I've created this, and this program represents us, that coming together, that what we all do from day to day to make the program space what it really is.
Awesome. I think that's a great way to close out today's session. So I'd like to take a moment to thank Yana List and Andrew Francis for taking their time and sharing their valuable information with us. Please take a moment to fill out the survey that we are dropping in the chat here. We aim to meet your needs, and filling out that survey is a great way to tell us what those needs are. We value that feedback. Also, a certificate of attendance will be sent to you within a week, as long as you attended live and you've completed that survey. That being said, we really hope that we'll see you next time. Same bat time, same bat channel. Well, not really, because it'll be March 26th, but you can find us through the exact same link, and we look forward to seeing you and talking more about the incredible work that we do and just how we can start at the bottom with the basics and build up really meaningful and impactful programs.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here.
Thanks for having us.